Thank you, and welcome back. Our telephone number is 648-5510 if you have any questions on the election process for our county clerk, Sally Litterly. Sally, let's talk about dates, because the 20th of March is certainly not the only one that we have to mark.
That's right. We call this, it's more than election month. It's election 6 months, because we're preparing for the election way before the election day occurs. But yesterday was actually the end of registration from deputy registrars. But what we do have in Illinois now is what's called grace period registration and voting. And grace period registration begins on the 22nd. That is today, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. That begins today, and that runs through March 13th. And what that does is, if you, as an individual that live here in Logan County, forgot to change your address, you got married, forgot to change your name, anything about your voter registration that would not enable you to vote on election day, you can come in to our office only. Bring 2 forms of identification, one with your current address on it, and change your registration. But you must cast a ballot at the same time. That ballot then stays in our office and is treated somewhat like an absentee ballot. So that's called grace period registration. And grace period registration is, in a sense, your last chance to register and vote in this March 20th election. And that grace period registration ends on March 13th. The other things, if you want me to go ahead and continue the other dates that are going on?
Please.
We also have absentee voting, which is, of course, going on in our office. Absentee in person started on February 9th, and absentee in person will continue all the way until the day before the election, which is March 19th. So, if you're in town and you would like to vote, you can come on in. We started on February 9th, and cast your ballot. Absentee voting differs from early voting by just a little bit, and here I'll tell you a couple of the other differences. But one of the similarities they have is absentee voting in person now is no excuse absentee. As you remember, a few years ago,
you used to have to say, why did you want to vote early?
Had to be out of town on election day, you're going to be in the hospital, all these different things. Well, we no longer have that. So if you want to vote absentee, I'm just going to be absent from the polls that day, so you come in and cast your ballot. The other choice you have is called early voting, and that is February 27th through March 15th. Now, early voting is a convenience voting, similar to absentee voting. Early voting in the bigger communities, the Chicago area, some of the Springfield area, they have some early voting sites, is what they're considered, and they are at your mall, at a grocery store, things like that, where it's convenient for a person to walk in and cast a ballot. They would have laptops with updated information that's directly connected to the election authority's office, that they could tell what kind of ballot that person gets and where they go to vote, and then their ballot's actually printed out for them right then, and then they cast their ballot, or they vote on what's called a DRE, which is an electronic system that allows them to vote. That's a little bit different for early voting, because early voting sites are popular in bigger areas. Our only early voting site is our office. With 4 people in my office, we can't be in early voting sites all over the county, nor would we use them. People just don't tend to go to the early voting sites to vote in our small communities. So we have 2 choices if you want to vote early, and that is absentee, and we have early voting. So right now we actually have several absentees that have people that have come into the office, but even more, we've had people that are voting by mail, which is also absentee. But there's a little bit difference with absentee voting by mail. The last day that we can send out a ballot from our office is March 15th. So if you want to vote by mail, you can do a couple of things. You can call our office and ask us to send you out an application to vote, which is a piece of paper that basically says, I want to vote in this election, and here's the party ballot that I'd like, and where we need to send it to. And then we send you out the ballot. And you need to make sure that that ballot's returned to our office and postmarked by the day before the election in order for it to be accounted. So we have early voting, absentee by mail voting, grace period voting, and absentee in-person voting. Lots of different kinds of voting. Plus, we have election day voting. As I was saying before, in absentee, we have several people that have chosen to vote absentee by mail. We have 177 absentee by mail. Well, we may have even more by now, the last count I did last week, but that's quite a few for a primary. And I think the reason why people are doing that is it's at ease. They can do it at home. They can keep their ballot with them while they're sitting around watching a debate and think, I think I decide I want to vote for this person based on the information that they've, heard all along as they're trying to decipher who is it exactly that I want to cast my ballot. So we've seen a fairly high increase in that for this election. But I believe that they're the same people that are probably would have normally gone to the polls. So I don't think we're going to see increased turnout in on Election Day at all, or totals for Election Day.
Are you projecting any percentage at this point?
Probably somewhere in less than 15%.
That is sad.
Yeah.
That is just sick.
It doesn't take that long, and you have so many different opportunities.
But like you said, there's some people that don't want to stick their neck out there for partisan reasons, and pick the person that they want, or from the party that they want. But I think this is a really important election that we need to make sure that we choose an individual that we think that can represent us best in the election in November.
What in the world more could the election authorities do to simplify this? I think that they've just gone the full mile. My golly, you've got a lot of chances.
Yeah, there is. Even with registration. Oh, I know one thing I wanted to mention is that our application to vote by mail is on our website. If you go to www.co.logan.il.us/clerk, it'll take you right to the clerk's website. Under election, there's tabs on the left-hand side. I think it's election dates. You can go to and download that form, fill it out, and mail it in. The other thing it has on the website is a sampling of the ballots. So you can see a sample of the Republican ballot, Democratic ballot, and the nonpartisan ballot.
How handy that would be, for instance, this time when there's a question on the ballot. Because sometimes when you get into the booth, the voting booth itself, and read the question, if you say no, that means you're for it. If you say yes, that means you're against it. And this would
alleviate
give you
confusion.
a chance to study ahead. So give us that website again,
Sure.
if you would.
It's www.co.logan, which is LOGAN.il.us, and then it's a /clerk, CLERK.
Well, that's a good stunt, really. Are all 102 counties doing this, or are we leading the pack again?
Some of the southern counties, there's a couple of the southern counties that don't have the availability to internet, believe it or not. There are really some that are struggling.
Yeah.
But most have that availability. And I would encourage anyone that their polling place has changed because perhaps we've consolidated it with another one. As I think we discussed back, I guess it was this summer, we reduced our polling places from our precinct, from 45 to 29. And in doing so, some had to be moved, such as in my home area of Cornland, where I lived for many years. They are all a part of Elkhart Township, which is a large township. Elkhart Township is a large township. But those individuals, there's not very many of them that cast a ballot there. There might be 30. But since that was so small, we had to move Elkhart to and put it in with Elkhart. So they might have to drive 10 miles to go cast a ballot. The other thing that would, because that may be somewhat of a hardship, they can vote by mail. All they have to do is call us, ask us, we'll send them the ballot, and make sure that they get their ballot counted.
But that alone shouldn't be a deterrent. I mean, people regularly drive much more than 10 miles to get to a mall.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because that's what early voting and absentee voting opens up, is that you don't have to have a reason to stop by the clerk's office to cast your ballot. Just when you're at your doctor's appointment that day, or you're at Walmart, or you're at the grocery store, whatever, this is convenience voting. So whenever you have time, you can just stop in and vote.
For those who do want to stop by, what are the hours?
8:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, are the hours.
Are you closed for lunch?
No.
So they could even run up there during their lunch hour.
Yeah, and it only takes a minute, especially if you've already studied your specimen ballot online and looked and see what the issues, well, one issue is, and the individuals that are on the office, or in the different areas that are running for office.
Can you still register where you get your driver's license, at your driver's license bureau?
Yes, that is one of the opportunities of what's called motor voter law. When you go in to the driver's license facility, it is required by them to ask you if you would like to register to vote. No, any service that you're receiving with them, they must ask you that. If you choose not to, they do what's called a declination form. They actually mark it and say that that person declined to register to vote, whether it be because they already were or they just don't want to. Now, the important thing about that is that on election day, if a person comes in to vote, and Judy's probably seen this before, that person may come in and say, hi, I'm Cinth, I want to vote, and we look them up in the book, we don't have them. We don't have them as a registered voter. And Cinth says, I was at the DMV, I was there, I got my services on this day, and I should be in there, and I want to vote. Well, what we offer her as a voter is called a provisional ballot. So we give her a ballot, she votes it, she gives us any information that she has about her, she fills out an affidavit, the judge fills out the affidavit too. We put that ballot in a different place. We call the DMV, check their records. They actually have the records that say how this person was treated that day when they came in to get their services, and if they were offered the opportunity to register to vote, and if they declined. And if they declined, we don't count that ballot. If they said yes, there could have been an error. And then that affidavit serves as a registration for that individual. That goes into our system, and then we cast the ballot through the machine that we have in our office that we use for our late militaries and things of that nature.
Because they have a little leeway on the voting date, don't they?
Military. Actually, we have 10 days after the election to count those ballots. That's when our canvass is. And they may come in after that. But they have to be postmarked by that day before.
They do? Well, and you never know. Sometimes it'll get there tomorrow, and sometimes
yeah,
it
there's
won't.
some interesting things with the military that we're doing now, and through the MOVE Act.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, the servicemen can go to our state website. Well, actually, it starts with the federal government, but then it refers us to our state Board of Elections website. Well, that military person can actually apply for a ballot online, and we actually can upload our ballot into this MOVE site, and they can pull the ballot out and vote it in that form, and they can send it back however they can get it back. Now, some of these people are on a ship somewhere. It's just regular mail doesn't work for them.
You're right.
And so when we do receive whatever form of ballot they sent us back, now remember, this is only for military. When we get these back, then we have to remake the ballot. And unfortunately, that allows for someone to see how you cast your ballot. But if you want your ballot to count, there's no other way to do it but to do this. So you remake the ballot and then send that through their system.
Interesting. Backing up a little bit, when we talk about the motor voter law, and I can register to vote when I'm in getting my driver's license, can they also do a change of address, do a change of name, or can that only be done at your office?
Good question. When people are going in to change their driver's license because they got married, we'll say, that would be perfect timing for them to change their voter registration at the same time. But if they're just going to do a address change, now if they're not going to go in and do an address change on their driver's license, probably, I think, because it's going to cost them $5. So they probably won't change their address on the driver's license. Therefore, that kind of negates the whole, I can't change my voter registration then at the same time. So it behooved them to go to our office to change their registration. But this period of time that we're in right now, they must come to our office. This is grace period. You can't go to the driver's license to register, or the libraries that also act as registrars, or some of the colleges that act as registrars, or your precinct committeemen. All those people are done with registration. The only place that you can come right now to register to vote and to cast your ballot at the same time through grace period registration is our office. And that's the only place right now, and that runs through the 13th.
You brought up college students. If I'm from Chicago, and I'm attending college at Lincoln College, can I register to vote in Lincoln?
Yeah, most students, and it's funny because I teach a class at Lincoln Christian University, and our students just did a voter registration drive. And that's one of the questions that students actually have quite often is, where should I have my registration? Well, probably the most important thing is for them to ask their parents where they should be registered to vote. And their parents may have some issues that are back home that are very important to them. Bonds, school bonds, something that affects their taxes, that they want to make sure that that child that is of age that now can vote will help support that issue. But also how their financial aid too says where their residence is important. So some students want to come to state-supported schools in Illinois and establish their residency, so they may end up changing their voter registration and then becoming a resident of Logan County and then registering to vote here, changing their driver's license and everything. Even though their home is back in wherever, Chicago, they may want to do it here. We have a few students that we know that they're not able to get back and forth to their home area, so they'll register here because they never go home. So they consider this their home, and they'll register to vote here.
Okay, thank you.
You brought up precinct committeemen. I didn't realize that they could register people to vote.
Yes.
What is actually the role of a precinct committeeman?
To support their party. The precinct committeemen are to they gather information from their party and their respective parties, disseminate that information to their precinct so people can know, here's the information about our party, and these are the people that are running, and here's why you should get out and vote. It's all canvassing your area type thing. But also precinct committeemen assist in the election judge role, as after they're elected in March. Now remember, they're not nominated in March like most other people are. They're elected in March. So when they're elected in March, they then can choose members of the election judge board, if you will, to be election judges. It depends on the partisanship of it, of who won, who had the highest votes in the last gubernatorial election. So the last gubernatorial election we had was in 10, and the highest number of votes in our whole county went to Brady, votes cast. So all of our precincts, the precinct committeemen will get 3 Republican judges and 2 Democratic judges. That's how they figure out who or how many they can get. As of who they choose, that's entirely up to them. They submit the names of, I'll use Republicans for instance, they will submit the names of 3 Republicans. Then those 3 names are confirmed by the circuit court, and then that is passed by the county board as an ordinance. And the reason though it's confirmed by the circuit court is because there's actually a time period that if someone wants to file an objection that that person shouldn't be an election judge, they can do so.
I was going to ask too, how many types of ballots must you have to have? If every precinct has to have actually its own ballot so that their precinct committeeman would be on it.
I think this time we have, I think it's 143. I think is what it is. Because it was like 50-some for the Democrats, 50-some for the Republicans, and then, of course, the people that can get nonpartisan get nonpartisan.
Sure.
I really had hoped that we waited on this nonpartisan aggregation issue to do it all together. Instead of having some people being able to vote for it, some people not being able to vote it, because it's very difficult to go in and code people correctly of who gets this aggregation ballot and who doesn't get this aggregation ballot. Unless, well, you've been an election judge, or unless you've worked in the election field, you have no idea what goes into coding ballots and preparing for an election. You walk in and you get your ballot on election day, but there's a way that all that information got on there, and a way that all that got proofed, and a way that all those codes match correctly, and that you're issued the correct ballot.
You said that it could happen that someone not be confirmed as an election judge. What would make the authority deny you that?
Judy, I've never seen it. I've been there 20 years, and I've never seen anybody not get confirmed, nor have I ever seen anybody come to court and have some type of objection that someone shouldn't be. That
would be a court case?
Well, judge has that filed. It's a circuit court case that it's left open on file. He opens that up, and that there's a time period that if there is an objection, someone could file as an objection why that person couldn't be. I guess maybe one of the reasons could be that if, let's say, a Republican precinct committeeman asked for an individual to be an election judge, and that person had consistently voted Democratic, and therefore they should be a Democrat election judge, that probably would be one reason. Other than that, if you can read, write, and speak the English language. Interesting, I just got back from a conference, too, at the Election Center, and thank God we're not a Section 5 county, because...
What is a Section 5?
Some of those counties in some states have to have bilingual ballots.
Oh, I suppose. So... Oh, dear heaven, what would you do in Chicago? How many bilinguals do you have?
They have Spanish, they have English, they have Chinese, and what else did they have?
Probably Polish. That's the biggest population outside Warsaw.
Korean, and perhaps Polish. The hard part about that is that you have to have an interpreter that can make sure that they put all the information on the ballot correctly, and that in every polling place, those judges... someone has to be able to speak those languages.
Oh, Holy Friday. How in the world? How do they even manage?
I don't know. You know, in Chicago, they have more election judges than they do us, population, in Logan County.
Is that right?
But if you're having to have, sitting at the table, not only those of you who can read, write, and cipher English, but Mandarin and Spanish, and...
Where do you get them? I mean, where do you get those people that can be there in that polling place all day? I'm very thankful that we don't have that here.
Yeah. What would force us into that position?
The census population. After we did the census, it would tell us our population based on nationality. Well, if individuals spoke, perhaps a majority of us spoke Spanish, then we'd have to have a Spanish ballot. I do know, like in Beardstown, they have that.
Excel hires.
Yeah. And then I think there might be some areas in northern Champaign County, but I don't think their ballot went Section 5, I don't believe. But that's extremely interesting and very, very difficult.
Oh, gosh, yes. It's bad enough here. You know, I just looked at my watch. Did you know what time it was, Jim? Well, as the staff and management, I think you'd have given us the high side. Sally, we've run way over here.
Well, it's because we're ladies and we enjoy talking.
A little chat does us well.
Here's a good quote for you to end your day at the
Oh,
very bottom.
okay. Here we go. Be sure to plant your feet in the right place. Then stand firm. Abraham Lincoln. Very good. Thank you, Sally,
You're
and thank you for
welcome.
being
Thank you,
with us.
Sally.
It's my
Thanks,
pleasure.
Sis.